Welcome back around the after dinner leadership table. There's two words that I want to share with you today that seem to work really well together. Leading change. We talk a lot about that in this episode, and it's no surprise that if you're looking to have impact within an organization, within a team, within a family, a community, that you are going to be initiating, influencing, bringing about a change of some sort. It's tightly woven to leadership. And today's guest, Andrea Di Vetta, is a university lecturer, and he specializes in leadership and change. Hence, we're talking about it. And we talk about some of the common misconceptions associated with leadership, and also the power of reflection in learning how to be an even better leader. So pull up a chair and enjoy. And we offer a special welcome around the after dinner leadership table to Andrea Di Vetta. Welcome to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Hello, Simon. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Andrea, you have the opportunity to be amongst the aspiring leaders of the world, lecturing on leadership and change and helping prepare them. What made you want to do that? What was it that took you into that field of academia?
I think it's my purpose to help others. I think my job is great in terms of playing a fundamental role into students' life. It's what they learn now and they apply it in the future, Simon. So I guess it's that purpose of really shaping somebody's personal and professional experiences that I really enjoy in my work and probably made me go that direction. So, and that relates a lot with your business, I guess, Simon, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. In fact, just to pull back the curtain for those that won't be aware, one of the reasons you're here as a guest is my colleague, Ryan, who produces the podcast, was a student in your lectures and was very impressed with your style and your approach. And he highly recommended you as a guest. So really pleased to have you here today. We're imagining ourselves around this virtual dinner table. What food reminds you of your childhood?
Well, that's a great question. I'm Italian, Simon. I can only go for lasagna.
Okay. There's many other options you could have chosen. Lasagna is a great choice. Lasagna is a great choice. Great. I was in Milan a week ago, actually, and had a lovely mushroom pasta when I was there. It was very tasty. Now, I'd love also to take you back a bit. What's memorable about you as a 20-year-old?
I'm Italian, as I've just shared, and I moved to the UK and to Cambridge to study, to learn a new language. So I think what's memorable is that drive, to achieve my objectives and to push myself, get out of the comfort zone. So I think that's what really memorable for me in terms of how I got here, right? My past, my experience. Something I really want to highlight. Yeah.
And who would you say you had as a mentor figure back then? Maybe they're still around now, but who's a mentor figure to you?
Well, it's somebody in my family. It will be my mum. She's a big inspiration, a big motivation for me, and so I think everything I've done is thanks to her. Ultimately, that's how I grew up, and she's always been a big motivation for me to to give something back to her, obviously to follow her steps and everything that she taught me and I learned from her in terms of pushing hard and to achieve things, because that's the more you do, the more you get out in life, and that's something I learned from her. So she's probably one of the biggest mentors. Of course, I've had great mentors at work as well, but
I love to hear the family mentors as well. That's great, and it's interesting how often mothers come up as inspirations with the guests I've spoken to over the last 4 years. And my mum's a massive hero of mine as well, bless her. And what I'd love to do now is just delve into what 3 leadership lessons you wish you had learned earlier.
There's an underlying theme that is time in all these 3. So the 3 biggest lessons will be, spending time with your people. The other will be to listen to them, and the third one to understand them. And everything comes down to time and how we use it, how effectively we use it.
Yeah. Okay, great. So how did you come to this realization?
Because we live in a fast-paced environment, and we live busy times and fast-paced lives. And I guess sometimes I always think I just don't have the time. I wish I had time to do that. And, I should have spent more time with these people to ensure that, I understood them better. Or, I wish I spent some more time doing that. And I just then come to realize on reflection that, is one of the biggest gifts of our life. It is the biggest resource. And time is made. We never get it back. But as leaders, we've got that gift to spend time how we want it, and we can make whatever we want of our time, but it's how we use it to listen to people, to spend time with your people, to get to understand them, that really makes a difference. And I will say, especially nowadays, living in a more ever more hybrid settings,
Yes.
it's making it even more difficult. So
yeah, I agree. So you've broken apart this idea of listening and understanding as 2 separate points. Just explain that to me. Why are those 2 defining elements of things that you wish you'd learned earlier?
because I think it's one of the subtopics. Of course, you understand people by spending time with them and listen to them. But I guess listening, because we often, I think we often biased, or we just can't wait to make our points or to talk about ourselves. We always make it about ourselves. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I wish, in the past, I spent more time just listening, right,
Okay.
to people. I would have learned more, way more. And I think is our predisposition sometimes of wanting to make our point, that takes away from that, from all the learning that we can get from just listening to others. So I think active listening or reflective listening is key there, instead of just listening, not being biased in terms of listening to just what we want to listen, right? That's
Yes.
often a big point there as well, because you can listen, but then listen in the wrong way. Or just thinking about what you want to say, not even listening. So that's very important there. And then I think in terms of understanding people, then it's very important to stay curious there. And we often work with big teams and with many people. And what I found is that many times, and naturally, I think we're human beings, we get on with certain people more, than others, and
Yes.
and that's normal, I guess. But I think really staying curious and understanding, what, where they're coming from, and and acknowledging their perspective is very important. And that's because we need to foster diversity, and diversity is very important in a team, and it brings us with different insights and different perspectives that ultimately will make our discussion arguments richer, which is very important. But I guess we often don't spend a lot of time and stay curious into listening, to different perspectives, or we are a bit biased there. So I think staying curious, it's remains central in that listening, in that listening space.
Yeah. How do you find that playing out in the lecture environment? There are clearly people coming in, and I guess are thinking they're just gonna sit and listen to you. How do you create an environment where you're encouraging these aspiring business leaders to take on listening, not just as a passive I'm going to be taught something, but like actually really kind of listening to engage and to as you say, to understand? How do you go about doing that in a lecture
Yeah,
environment?
yeah. Well, great question. And it's something that I strive, on learning every day, and improve every day because it's not easy, and
Yeah,
that's just the reality.
yes.
We've got two different types of lectures. Well, of teaching. We've got what we call lectures or tutor-led workshops,
Yep.
or what we call seminars or student-led workshop, and that's again to differentiate the two types of approach, or at least the different expectations of the sessions. So we tend to get more of that passive approach during tutor-led workshops, tutor-led
Hmm.
sessions, and a bit more of a practical, engaged sessions during student-led sessions. But ultimately, when you've got over 100 people in the room, and even if it's a tutor-led workshop, then you try your best to ensure that the students are active listening. They are, or they're not just scrolling TikTok or Instagram, and you'll probably never know that. I think it's very important to create a safe environment where everybody it's comfortable, to speak up, to raise a hand, to make a contribution, to share their experiences, because ultimately that's when even students learn the most, because they don't only learn from me, but they learn from each other. Um,
Yeah.
and also, it's very important to create an environment where students are critically reflecting on what they've been told, of critical thinking. Because I always say I haven't got all the truth, and clearly today I haven't got all the truth of what you're asking me, Simon.
Yeah.
But it's my perspective, and of course, we teach through research, through our practitioner experience, but it's not the only truth. And obviously, I
Hmm.
cannot stress that enough being an academic as well, in terms of different perspectives on different topics. So, in order to do that, I think it's, first of all, I always say that in class. I always reinforce this point,
Yes.
especially at the beginning of the module, at the beginning of the trimester. Um, and ultimately, it's the way you communicate, I guess, which is another essential skill in leadership. The way you listen and the way you communicate. Sometimes it's time to listen, sometimes it's time to communicate. And it's so important, and communication is not just verbal. It's how you approach the students, how you, what you say, but also, your attitude. And, when somebody's got questions, I don't go, ha, 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 that's completely wrong. There's always an opportunity to have a conversation around, where do you come from and why do you share that? Why do you think that's an important point, even if I have a different perspective?
How is academia changing for this fast-paced environment that we're talking about? How are you finding that it was helping to prepare for the future of leadership?
So I think experiential learning is key there for
Hmm.
leadership courses.
Yeah.
In As part of the module I lead, we've we've created the assessment in the form of a reflective learning portfolio, where we ask students to understand about themselves, because that's 1.0 leadership, I guess,
Yes.
and then to apply that. So getting involved into an experience to put into practice what they've learned, and then reflect on that, because as I said earlier, reflection is key. And the other thing I've implemented in the module together with my colleagues is to address some of the grand challenges that are shaping organizations and leaders.
Yeah.
So we're not only talking about leadership theories, which you can imagine we do a lot, or the module is leadership and change, so we address change management as well. But in order to equip the students with the knowledge and the experience to lead. We also talk about digitalization, digital transformation. AI has been one of the technologies there. EDI and climate change and ESG reporting. So these are the three key grand challenges that we address at the end of the module. At the end, not because of importance, but just because we talk about leadership and change management first. So I think making something, the curriculum relevant and up to date, as well as the learning approach for experiential learning,
right,
are the two key things there.
And you're building in this reflective practice into the module as well, you're saying. And so how would that, if I'm a student, how would that look and feel? What would I be doing that would encourage me to have that level of reflection?
We mentioned the student-led workshops just before, and that's something that we've, having a smaller class, we're able to implement in the module. So we get them to engage in questionnaires and tests, such as the Myers-Briggs personality test, such as Teams roles and Belbin, that unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago, but has provided us with a lot of research in the fields or on different team roles. So we want the students to understand about themselves, their personality, their way of leading, their way of being, reinforcing the fact that there's not one best way. Although I think I'm a bit of a people person and I'm outgoing, and you may think that I'm a good leader because of that, but I'm glad if I am. But there's so many better leaders than me out there that probably are not are a bit more introvert and are not the loudest, I will say, in the room. Sure. So we wanted to even tackle one of the biggest misconceptions there. Especially, as I say, our class is very diverse. We've got international students from all over the world, so it's very interesting to tackle that perceptions of leaders and leadership in class.
So are you suggesting the misconception there is that leadership is about being loud and authoritative? Is that one of the common misconceptions that you come up against?
Yes, 100%. And I think in week one, I just put some pictures up in the slides of some politicians or some of the most important what we would define leaders. So if you Google leaders on Google, then you will find them a lot, and students all agree. They see leaders in the Trumps or the Boris Johnson or not getting too political, but that's what we get. Or the most important chief executive officers, and we get that a lot. So just they see leaders in power, and that's the biggest misconception. So we do talk about different types of power, and that's and trying to find that.
I always find that fascinating. In fact, when I ask about team leadership, for example, or ask about leadership and leadership qualities when I'm with a group, I will often encourage them to think about their own experience of being led and leading. So what was their manager like, rather than thinking about world leaders or leaders of companies they've never worked for. We may have an opinion on Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or whatever, the popular people quoted, but it's like, have you ever worked for that person? Have you ever worked around them? We only know stories of working around them. And the same with politicians. We have some evidence that's fed to us through the news, and we can make some judgment about their ability to run a country or something. But I'm really interested to have people talk about their lived experience and what it feels like to be part of a team. Now, it may be that some of your students have only worked and done some part-time work in retail or something for some of them, but they still have been around leaders. They've been on perhaps sports teams and these kind of things. They know what it feels like from that perspective. I think sometimes it can be a bit misleading, actually, to talk about what leadership is in terms of a country versus an organization or a company. And I don't know if you share that, but those are some of the things I try and get people to think about, what they've actually experienced, rather than what maybe the media has informed them that this person is like. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree there. When you mention media, right? The power of stories there. It's so important, right? In terms of what we hear, and we do talk to our students about the story of Elon Musk, because obviously that get mentioned a lot,
Yeah.
and how your perception may change if you think about Elon Musk having escaped and moving to America with little money in his pocket, and with nothing, then working hard and becoming one of the richest, most famous person in the world. And if you hear that story, then you'll think he's a great leader, and that's the reason why he comes up all the time. But
Yeah.
if we then analyze, that the family perspective, and the fact that he didn't start from nothing, but the big investments from his dad, and the mines, and all we know about the family, then perhaps our perception will change. Our perceptions of Elon Musk as a leader will change, because we do like that, heroic perception,
Yes.
that heroic
Rag to riches.
leader.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's one of those misconceptions that we do, tackle, and we start from that on purpose, right? The world biggest leaders, but then we ask students to work on a change management case study, where they
Mm-hmm.
actually asked to work as leaders, work in a team. So we asked them, okay, now that you've known about yourself, how do you put that into practice? What about different personalities in a team? What about different team roles? Did any leaders emerge in the team, or it didn't? What went well,
Yeah.
what didn't go well, and why? So it's that reflective practice, as I was
Great.
talking about before.
Yeah, it's very powerful, very powerful. And as you're teaching various leadership models, um, maybe if I could get your reflection, are you noticing some things are becoming, let's call them outdated? Or which models did you use perhaps a few years ago that you've started to use less often? Are there any of that you're noticing, that you're maybe discarding some of the models you held dear some years ago, and any reflections on that from you?
That's a great question. It's a bit debate, and it's a bit debate between academics, because obviously we all have different opinions. Um, you've probably know of the Lewin's model on
Yeah.
change management.
Yes.
Um, I mean, and whether in change management or leadership, we can criticize models as much as we want, really, thinking that they're outdated, or whether they're still relevant. I guess it's been part of the review of the module to still keep it. But one of the things that we are doing now is to talk a bit more about the historic development of it, for them to understand why we got to this point nowadays.
Yeah.
So what is still the relevance of what we could argue is an outdated old model, but it can still help us understand what's going on today, and what lays the foundation of more reasons, frameworks, and models. So that's what we've done.
Well, perhaps I could not put you on the spot too much here, but maybe flip this around. What's a model that has stood the test of time that you think, my goodness, this is still just as powerful today as when it was first written, and just registers and resonates?
I think Kotter's, is probably one of the most common.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot lead a module on change management and leadership without, talking about Kotter, because I think is one of the most prominent works there.
Yeah.
Especially from an implementation perspective, that puts together the foundational work from Lewin. That think about the disruption there when you lead in on some change, but also from an implementation perspective, what are the different things that you need to have, that you need to consider, to ensure that change is implemented. Obviously, it doesn't mean that will be that change project or initiative will be successful, because we know that there's a lot there. And personally, I worked for a consultancy on change management, so I'm able to bring that practitioner perspective in class as well. But I cannot, just dislike or not talk about Kotter. So I think that's still prominent, something that we still need to have.
I'm going to misquote him now, but one of the quotes that I really love from him is to the effect that we spend 0.001% communicating about the change of our leadership time, and then we wonder why people haven't bought into it. We'll give a town hall speech and then expect that everyone is now committed to the change and will see it through to perfect execution. In fact, we've just one and done. And I love his emphasis on the importance of communicating frequently and this is where the listening comes in again, listening to what people are actually saying as you're trying to implement a change, and picking up on their concerns, etc. So it feels like we've come full circle back to where we started with the 3 leadership lessons. Is the importance of listening and understanding when we're involved in leading change.
Yeah, that's very important, isn't it? I always when I talked about time earlier, is because I always think, of course, in terms of listening, getting to know people, and communicating, we've got little time to do that, and that's and that's the reality. I always say I've got an hour session and I could communicate about anything, but obviously I need to make a choice about what I communicate to you, to make sure that each and every single word is relevant. And perhaps I've got 10 minutes to talk to my colleagues, to my manager, to my team. And I need to make sure that in those 10 minutes, I just listen and make sure that I say what I want to say. And that's just the reality. And I haven't come to realize this, until recently, when I just realized about the power of communication. We often think that the more we say, the better, right? The more information, the better. But it's about your input, but also what you get back from the others. From the other people. So again, their relevance is key. Don't you think, Simon?
I totally agree. I think the thinking about the purpose of the communication and it recognizing the two-way dialogue is the most powerful thing that can be happening. So even when you get locked in on opinion and you're something you want to express really deeply, allowing space and time for some form of dialogue so you can get whether that's landed, even if you now know that the other person deeply disagrees with your opinion, that's better than an assumption that they do not. You can do something with that rather than an assumption that you think you've got agreement and in fact you don't. So yeah, I love the important role that communication has. And I guess in that spirit, Andrea, what haven't we talked about today that you wish we had done?
Oh, great question. We could talk about the future of leadership. Where do you see this going, Simon? Probably you've got more to share, but it's an informal. So let's challenge each other.
Well, where I'm seeing effective leadership and what I think is going to be magnified going forward is almost the leader as a facilitator. And that they are, so the word facilitate means to make easy. We take change, for example. How can a leader help a change initiative be made easier through their involvement? So yes, they're going to provide input, they're going to provide direction and vision, but so often that's most powerfully co-created with their colleagues and with their team than just dictated down the line. Now, this is not necessarily new, but I think in the age of technology and speed, the power of being able to bring a group of people together, facilitate with them the path that they're going to go on together to create a team that has a collective purpose and understanding is just getting magnified. You could type this into Google, you can type this into AI, you're going to get some good speech, but that ability to be able to manage that dialogue with a group of people effectively and help them come to a collective conclusion about the way forward and then see it through to its powerful impact. I don't know. There's something in that for me. I see repeatedly the distinguishing between the good and the very good leaders I work with, their ability to be able to harness and unlock the powers of the team. And yeah, so I see that as almost a facilitator role rather than a dictator kind of authoritarian role. Do you have a view on that?
I love that. Something I wanted to share, which is extremely connected. I think there's something so powerful in connecting with people, in creating those connections when you actually spend time, with the people, as I said earlier, and try and understand them. It's creating that connection, which is very hard, and perhaps empathy plays a big role there. In terms of understanding circumstances and the why behind behind people and the way they behave. So I guess it's becoming ever harder, as I said, with the hybrid settings and the fact that I never get to see my colleagues, and it's very hard, and we're working together and we're all busy, and how can you do that? We often talk about technology, and we try and leverage it to make our work, easier, better, quicker.
Yes.
But often it brings about challenges as well, such as, yes, we can work from home and we can take this podcast from different places, which is great. I think spending time with the people and creating meaningful connection there is extremely important. It's funny nowadays when I see some roles coming up on chief energizing, empowering, things like that. You've probably seen that on LinkedIn, and we go quite creative and funny, I guess. But I like to take the the positives, to take what's the rationale behind it? Why do we do that?
Well,
And I
my
think,
title, I've chosen Chief Potential Officer is mine as an example, which is it's intended to be a conversation starter more than anything. Is what does that actually mean? And it's like trying to see the potential in the people that you're working with and helping them to realize beyond that and to unlock the potential and energy within an individual and a team is something that I'm really striving to do. So that's with my own team, but also with my clients when I'm working with them on a one-to-one or in a team basis. How do I help them to achieve the potential that's within them and unleash that potential? That's so much fun to watch and to see happen.
yeah, that's I think that's also where I wanted to get right, because we've talked about busy times, fast-paced lives and environments, and I guess the influence that we can have on others is just down to that burst of energy, I think, that we can convey to other people to overcome obstacles, but also is the kind of provide that energy to understand their needs and satisfy that needs, because we all have different needs. as individuals, we all join an organizations because we want to make, our own career, and we all have different objectives. And I think your role, Simon, and many other leaders' role is to understand them and energize others to, to motivate them to, it's the achievement of needs, as I say, right?
Yeah.
And we all have it, and it's about, having that energy, transmitting that energy to motivate and influence others to do so. That is very important.
I love the analogy. I've used this with one of the workshops I have. We have a Newton's cradle, where you've got the multiple spheres and you pick one up and you clack into the others, and then the end sphere fires out the other end, so you've got this kind of rhythmic desk toy, I guess, that's typically used. And I like this idea of like that first ball clacking against the second sphere, and then there's not much evidence of any energy transfer. It's not like they all swing. The central spheres actually stays quite still, and then it kicks out at the end. And I love that thought of this energy being transferred through the system. Some of the things we do as a leader, it's not always obvious of the impact, and then suddenly it has this knock-on effect on our ability for change to happen. And some of the small and simple things that we might be doing on a day-to-day, like spending time with our colleagues and having rich conversations with them, not necessarily long conversations, but meaningful conversations. And then suddenly we realize maybe 6 months later or 12 months later, the sequence of those weekly calls or those rich conversations have suddenly produced an impact that was much bigger than we ever anticipated because of the way that we've worked. And we expand that, multiply that out across a team. You've got this huge transfer of energy that goes through a system, and a leader, I think, is often a person that can help unlock that or initiate that energy through the system. And for people to see, they can offer more, they can do things differently, they can innovate, they can contribute, they have value, they belong, all of these things. And then suddenly we get this full utilization of brain power and creative energy, and people utilizing their resources in a different way. And boom, we've got this impact that comes out the other side that surprises everybody, astonishes people. So that's one of the things I love to watch and observe. And I'm fortunate enough to be around some really effective leaders in industry and see them operate. As much as I'm trying to help them or coach them, I see them doing brilliant things in their organizations, inspiring dozens, then hundreds of people to operate in different ways and to bring even better value to their customers. It's so inspiring to watch. I'd love to come back to where we started, at least. Thinking about yourself as a 20-year-old, what advice would you give to him today?
Just, move on and don't be influenced too much by, people's perceptions and and feedback in terms of when they look at you and try and let you down. You have a lot of that at the beginning of your career within organizations. So I think being strong enough, mental toughness, something that it's very important for leaders.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being so open about that, and I really appreciate all that you've shared, and I wish you continued success as you help people to lead more effectively and to lead change more effectively, particularly. So thank you, Andrea. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Simon. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number 1, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success. And please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.